Vikings Nation, news broke that Minnesota has signed veteran safety, or really more accurately linebacker in practice, Jamal Adams. And while this signing might ultimately amount to nothing more than a training camp roster body, there is a genuine case that it could carve out real meaning for this defense heading into 2026. Let us break down exactly who this signing affects and why it matters, going through every single player whose situation just got more interesting. Start with the player this signing does not affect at all, because clearing up that confusion matters before diving into everyone it actually does impact. This has zero connection to Harrison Smith's ongoing free agency situation. Despite some surface-level overlap given how much Smith has operated in the box in recent seasons, the actual skill sets are not comparable in coverage and range. Even a 37-year-old Harrison Smith remains multiple times more effective in coverage than Jamal Adams ever was, even at his absolute peak. Adams has essentially functioned as a money linebacker hybrid before that specific archetype became fashionable across the league, and honestly, he probably should just be classified as a linebacker at this point, given how his career has actually unfolded on the field. This signing in no way closes the door on Harrison Smith potentially returning to this roster. It is also entirely possible this signing affects nobody at all in any meaningful sense. Contract details remain unconfirmed, but the realistic expectation is a one-year deal close to the league minimum with minimal guaranteed money. Perhaps a modest signing bonus and some incentive language, but nothing that guarantees. Even Pace Jr. sits at the top of this list, because Adams, having functioned as a de facto linebacker throughout his recent career, particularly during his time with the Raiders, creates direct positional overlap with Pace's role on this roster. The honest assessment of Pace remains genuinely appreciative of his energy and his competitive fire, but the mental errors that have shown up in his game over recent seasons, notably in specific moments against the Steelers and in the second matchup against the Bears, represent real and documented concerns. Minnesota's inside linebacker room already has stability, with Cashman and Wilson holding down the primary starting roles, but both carry some injury history and are getting a bit further along in their careers, which means adding genuine depth at the position through Adams provides real value regardless of what happens with the rest of this roster. The more financially interesting angle involves how this signing affects Minnesota's leverage in Pace's own contract situation. Pace is currently due his restricted free agent tender at $3.25 million, none of which is currently guaranteed. With Adams now in the mix as a legitimate depth option, the organization gains real negotiating leverage to potentially bring Pace's number down to something more reflective of a backup and special teams role, possibly with incentive language built in to reward performance rather than guaranteeing the full tender amount. There is also a genuine argument that Pace retains real trade value given that he was a starter for the bulk of 2 full seasons and played at a genuinely competent level during stretches of that tenure. If he performs well throughout training camp and the preseason, a late-round pick swap involving Pace becomes a completely realistic outcome worth monitoring. Jake Goldenday, the 6th-round pick out of Cincinnati, represents the second player whose developmental path just became clearer because of this signing. The original plan for Goldenday involved genuine positional flexibility, playing some off-ball linebacker snaps, some edge rusher reps, and some slot corner responsibilities similar to what he did during his college career with the Bearcats. With Adams now occupying that off-ball linebacker role, even though Adams himself carries some theoretical edge and slot versatility from earlier in his career that does not really reflect his game anymore at this stage, Goldenday gets freed up to focus his development specifically on the edge rather than splitting his attention across multiple positions. The Vikings clearly are not finished addressing their edge rusher depth, given that they still have Andrew Van Ginkel, Diamond Dallas Turner ready to ascend into a genuine star role, and Tyron Ingram-Dawkins having lost weight specifically to transition toward more edge rusher usage. Goldenday fitting into that specific mix. Profiling somewhat similarly to a hybrid like Anthony Barr or Coney Ealy from previous eras, gives this defense another genuine option as they work to replace Jonathan Greenard's departed production. Josh Metellus represents the third player affected, and this might actually be the most naturally complementary fit on this entire list. Minnesota already deploys that positionless star money linebacker hybrid role through both Jaron Kearse and Metellus specifically, which means Jamal Adams landing in this exact defensive system represents genuinely ideal scheme fit. This is not about Adams threatening to replace Metellus, who has played at an extremely high level and is himself working toward a new contract situation that could see some leverage dynamics play out similarly to the Pace situation. The more compelling outcome involves Adams and Metellus working in concert on early downs, particularly against offenses operating heavy 11 personnel groupings, or simply Adams serving as a legitimately capable backup option in the event Metellus deals with injury. Given that no truly clean one-for-one replacement option currently exists in Brian Flores' defense if Metellus were sidelined, whether that fallback is Jay Ward or a returning Harrison Smith, Adams and Metellus genuinely represent the closest positional overlap on this roster in terms of what they can both contribute from that specific box safety and linebacker hybrid role. There is even a real scenario where both players see the field simultaneously in certain packages. The numbers game implications extend to Josh Ross, the University of Michigan product, and Jacob Roberts, the CFL standout, both competing for inside linebacker depth spots behind Cashman, Wilson, and potentially Pace, with Adams now added to that competition. Alongside undrafted free agents Kamara and Walker also in the mix, this creates a genuinely crowded competition where, finally, this signing genuinely benefits Brian Flores specifically as the defensive coordinator whose scheme philosophy this player fits perfectly. Whatever jokes have circulated about Adams over recent seasons regarding his positional classification as a linebacker, despite technically being listed as a safety, the underlying qualities he brings: genuine positional versatility, veteran experience, football intelligence, and consistent defensive aggressiveness across Pace's contract leverage, Golden Days developmental focus, the Metellus complementary fit, the inside linebacker depth competition, and Brian Flores' scheme philosophy all represent genuine and worthwhile storylines to track as camp progresses. Drop your thoughts in the comments on whether you think Jamal Adams makes this 53-man roster. Tell us if you think this signing genuinely affects Ivan Pace's long-term future with this organization, and let us know if you are excited to see how Flores deploys a player with this specific positionless skill set. Smash that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Vikings Nation Skoll production value. Let us go.